Okay, so let's look at Chapter 8, and we're going to be talking about managing for quality and competitiveness. This is operations management, and this is probably going to be one of the hardest ones that you have to deal with because a lot of students don't think that they want to go into what is considered factory type work or something like that. But don't let that scare you off. There is a lot of opportunities in the manufacturing sector, especially now that manufacturing has started coming back into the United States. They do pay very well, and being a manager, you're not actually going to work on the assembly line. You would be in charge of personnel or the projects and things like that. The first slide here is a video on what is operations management, and hopefully it'll play for you. Some of my videos are being blocked because they're saying copyrighted, so but hopefully it just kind of explains what management operations is. All right. So operation management actually refers to the development and administrative activities involved in transforming resources into goods and services. And that's what this whole chapter is going to be about. It's transforming of resources into goods and services. Historically, previously, it was always called production or manufacturing. Now it is changed to operations management, and it also recognizes that it can be services or ideas, okay? Production management involves these three areas: manufacturing, which is the activities that is used to make tangible products, and it's called production. Then production involves the activity process used in making tangible products called manufacturing. So you see there's a little bit of overlap there. They kind of feed on each other. And then operations is that it describes the activities including production with both tangible and intangible products. Now, the whole chapter focuses on transformation process, and it is at the heart of the operation management. It's which inputs are converted into output. So that means I'm bringing in something and I'm converting it into something else. Inputs can be resources, which are labor, money, material, energy, and it's converted into outputs. The outputs is the service and ideas that result from the conversion of inputs. Now, this is where you would come into play. It's the operations managers control the process by taking measurement or feedback and comparing them to the established standards in that that realm, that activity, and then taking any activity to correct any deviation. This is just showing the transformation process, how it's converted into a product. So it just shows you how we do that. Now, slide 7 is actually taking us input, output, and the transformation process to making furniture. So it just shows you that we have some oak tree, we strip it, it is gone probably shipped to a lumber yard, which saws them into appropriate sizes. They dry them, they strip the oak lumber, it's wood, it's routed into the shape, it's assembled, stained, and varnished, and here's our output. We have a oak bookcase. So that is what we're talking about when we're talking about input, output, and the transformation process. Now, In business, in service business, it's a little bit different than it is in the other type of physical business as far as manufacturing. Um, the transformation process occur in all organizations, regardless of what they produce, because it starts and it has a start and it has a finish. Um, in the service business, you have customer contacted component. Um, and what we're doing there is we're striving to provide a standardized process, and then the technology can offer interface that creates your response. Okay. The output is generally intangible, even perishable. Here's some of the difference between manufacturer and service providers. The nature and the consumption of output. Service providers require more customer contact, and it happens at the point of conception. Uniformity of the input is services are more customized to each customer. The output is the service is performed differently. Labor is in the service industry is more labor intensive, and the measure of productivity is intangible services. Product makes measurement more difficult. Okay, before a company can make a product, it has to decide what what they're going to produce for what customers. They've got to know who are their customers going to be. They're going to look at what are the process they're going to use to make, and then they have to think about what type of a facility do they need to make their product. So it's not just throwing everything out there. It's they've got to have these four things, these four elements in place before they start their plant their production. So planning the product. Okay, before making a product, a company must know what a customer wants. They have to know what's going to satisfy the need. They have to know how they're going to produce it. They have to know what resources are needed. They have to know what customers want, what their prices they're willing to pay, which is going to be more into the marketing that we're going to get in the next product. Then they must plan how to produce the product. Operation managers, which would be you guys, you plan the resources needed to make that product. They need to know what skills are needed. They need to know how many people they need to make the product. And then they have to know the exact actual process through which the inputs are going to pass. So planning a product and making a product makes a lot of decisions that product managers have to make. All right, so let's talk about designing the operations process. Before a firm can begin production, it's got to determine the appropriate method of transforming those resources into that desired product. One thing you have to consider is that customer specific needs and desires are going to dictate that process. There are generally three types of processes. You have standardization, modular, and customization. Now, standardization is making identical interchangeable components. I mean, everything's going to be exactly the same. Standardization is going to speed up the production and quality, and it's going to reduce the production cost. Although you might not get exactly what the customer is going to want, but it's a standardized product. So I think about IKEA. IKEA makes bookshelves, and it is going to be, if you go buy one box of bookshelves, it is made exactly the same as all 50 bookshelves that they have on that stacked up there. It's not going to be any different. Modular designs is the creation of an item in self-contained units or modulars, um, which can be combined or interchanged to create different products. Now, the modular design allows a products to be repaired quickly, and that reduces the cost of labor. But the component itself is expensive because it raises the cost of repair materials. And then finally, you have customization, and it's making products to meet a particular customer's needs or wants. And these products are produced in a way that meets particular customer needs or wants. Mass customization is making products to meet the needs of a large number of individual customers. That would probably, in my opinion, that would probably be your car manufacturers. They know that people who buy SUVs want a particular design, whereas a customer that buys a Ford Escort or Escape is going to be a different type of customer. Now, planning capacity is another area that resource managers have to think about. Capacity refers to the maximum load that an organizational unit can carry or operate. The unit of measurement may be a worker or a machine or a department. It can even be a branch or entire plant. Now, what I'm thinking about here is I think about Mohawk carpet, and the reason I know that is because my brother-in-law is a executive at Mohawk Carpet. They have different plants that do different things. If Mohawk not only makes carpet, they make hardwood flooring. So they have a plant that works just with the hardwood floor. And then they have a plant that may be carpet, but then it is broken down into branches, the different types of carpet. So you have to think about that. Capacity can be stated in terms of input or output. And one thing you have to think about is efficiently planning the organization's capacity is an important process for the operations manager. And again, this is going back to showing you how important that operation managers are. When capacity levels fall short, you have an unmet demand. You lose customers. When there's more capacity than needed, then you have a resulting of unused expensive resources that's going to cost your department. So to avoid those situations, operation managers, you got to effectively and accurately forecast your demand for what you're going to need. Once a capacity decision is looked at, maybe factory size, it's difficult to decide to change it. Once you've built a factory, you can't go back in there and make it smaller. You can make it larger, but you can't make it smaller. So that's something you have to think about. Now, when you're thinking about planning a facility, and an operation manager will be in on this, because that's your area of expertise. So you have to think about that many products are produced in factories, but others are produced in stores or at home. But ultimately, where is it going to be? You have to decide where you're going to locate your facilities. What is the layout best suited for that? Are you close to the raw materials, the transportation, power, labor, anything like that? You also have to think about looking at physical and virtual locations. Those are things that you have to think about. One of the other things is the influence of community. How is that going to work? Do they want you there? This is an area that has been in the news lately, in Smyrna and over in DeKalb County, I believe it is, in Georgia. There were two facilities that I can't even remember. It was something to do with they did the face masks that are being used in the COVID-19. I know what it was. They brought them in and they put them under, and they what's the word? I'm sorry, I can't think of the word I'm thinking about. Sterilized them. They were sterilization plants, and they said they put off too much emissions, and so they closed them down. Well, because of the COVID-19 that was so rampant in March and April, now they've opened them back up. You don't hear a lot of the communities going in and saying we don't want this because they want to be safe. So you have to think about that. Also, taxes. Those are things that you have to think about when you're planning where you're going to put your location of your facility. Here's another video on operations process. Just take time to watch that. Now, let's talk about when you're trying to plan your facility, what type of layout do you want? There's several, and we're going to talk about the fixed layout. And the fixed layout has a central location that's for the basic product and the resources required. A company using a fixed layout could be called a project organization, because it's typically involved in large, complex projects such as construction or exploration. The process layout organizes the transformation process into departments that group related processes. Intermittent organization creates product to customer specifications, and they produce relatively few units of each product, but they use the process layout. The product layout breaks down work into relatively simple tasks assigned to workers who are usually positioned along an assembly line. Now, they also break it down into what is called continuous manufacturing organization, and they run assembly lines creating products with many similar characteristics. That again would go back into the Ford product line, the assembly line. You have somebody that assembles headlights. You have somebody that assembles the tail lights, the headliners, the steering wheel, different things like that. That is a continuous manufacturing organization. When we're thinking about that type, one thing that you have to think about is that the chosen layout would be best accommodated the type of activities for the facilities. One of the things the book mentions is that the Apple Store's design, even though it was technology, it was designed for a flow, different things like that. Now, once you kind of decided, there are some technology areas that we're going to talk about that'll help you with this. And every industry is going to dictate the transformation process. One of them is CAD, and if you had CAD in high school, computer aided design, it's where they go in and they put it on computers instead of you have somebody that draws it out on paper. So that's a way that you can do it. You also have computer assisted manufacturing, and it actually controls the transformation process. I know we have several plants here in Georgia, right here in Canton, and I know they use CAM because I've had a couple of speakers come to my on campus class and talk to them, and they talk about that they have a system that actually picks it up and they put it here and they put it there. And they do reassure that my students that even though they're using technology, they have to have people that know how to do this in order to program the computer. If the computer goes down, they have to know how to fix it and different things in that area. 3D printing. 3D printing has been a big icon here during the COVID-19 virus outbreak. A lot of students from Reinhardt actually went into 3D printing and did the mask for the healthcare industries. It has become very popular in businesses as a way of using inexpensive and plastics. Now, these are getting robots that we have talked about, just different ways that you can use robots in computer integrated manufacturing. So let's talk about sustainability and manufacturing. This is very important when it comes to operations management. Sustainability issues are increasingly important to your stakeholders. You will hear a lot of companies say they're green, and when they're talking about green, all they're doing is saying that they're doing everything they can not to pollute, that they don't use urban sprawl. They're mindful of climate change, waste management, and GMO and different things like that. So it's one thing is it does lead to increased profits. Make sure you keep that in mind. All right, let's talk about supply chain management. Chain management is connecting and integrating all of the parties, the people, the distribution system, everything comes together. It's called logistics. Logistics is big in business. So if you can take classes on logistics, especially if you're thinking of going into operations management, this would be a great thing to help you to have on your resume. Um, it integrates the firms such as your raw material, your components. It's managing those finished products, packaging, and then making sure that it gets to your customers. Purchasing is buying all the material, or it's also called procurement of all the products needed by the organization. And on that, the aim is to obtain the desired quality and quantity of those products at the lowest possible cost. You can make some of those components more economically and efficiently, but if it costs more to make than it does to buy, that's where you as an operation management need to know that so that you can save your company or your department money. And so it would be your job to know that maybe you can buy or lease it. And one thing is you have to know is to the supplier, are they reliable? You want to make sure that you are reliable suppliers. Inventory. Now, when we're talking about inventory, we're talking about raw material, components, whether they're completed or partially completed, or the equipment that the furnished goods use. And you have three types. Now, you have finished good products, and those are products that are ready for sale, fully assembled. I'm going to put them out there and let them go. That is what I think of IKEA. work in progress inventory are products that are partly completed. They're in some stage of the transformation product. And then you have the raw material, and that's all those products that you need to get that finished work inventory. Now, one thing that you have to know is that as an operation manager, you have to be closely coordinated with inventory control to make sure that inventory is not over or under the what you need, or you're going to close down a production line. And this is just talking about inventory control. And so it has to be coordinated, and inventory managers, which are different than operation manager, has to determine proper inventory levels. So that is where you're going to use a lot of that Excel that you learned in your business classes, that you're going to be keeping up with your inventory control. Operation managers, and it just talks about these. And this is another video on Amazon inventory control, and I hope it won't block it for you, because I loved it, and it is so important in today, that because everybody buys from Amazon, it's interesting to see how they do that. All right, so let's talk about approaches to inventory control. You have 3 different types of models. The first one is called the EOQ, or the economic order quality, and it's an approach to inventory management that identifies the optimum number of items in order to minimize the cost of managing, ordering, storing, and using them. So as an inventory manager, you know that I got to have 25 of this item in order, when this product comes through, all 25 of them have that one product. Just in time, and this is what a lot of the big companies will use, it eliminates waste by using smaller quantities of material that arrive just in time for the transformation process. So it requires less storage and management expenses. And the last one is called material MRP, or material requirement, and it schedules the precise quantity of material needed to make the product. Now, one thing I forgot to mention was that in just in time, you might have shortages, and if you do, then it's going to be an expense getting them shipped in, especially if there's a disaster and you need that product, just like right now. I think about the toilet paper. Just in time, we had to have all the toilet paper shipped in, and it would result in higher cost of that toilet paper. So you have to kind of know what your product is and what you need. Outsourcing. Now, outsourcing is the contracting of a manufacturing or other tasks to independent companies, and generally they are overseas. We hear a lot about outsourcing, and globalization requires that supply chain managers to improve the speed and balance resources. And this just kind of gives you some things about outsourcing. Of course, one of the biggest outsourcing is the athletic shoe manufacturers, such as Nike, New Balance. All of those outsource them to China and Vietnam because of lower manufacturing, because they will work for cheaper wages than ours. You have to know that as if you're doing outsourcing, that you have to hire supplies that make sure that those suppliers are using quality products, and that because it's going to fall back on Nike or New Balance, it's not going to fall back on the manufacturer. It's going to be whose name is on that brand. It also will free up free time and resources for the company that's doing the outsourcing. But it does produce negative public opinion. You're going to see a lot of the outsourcing start coming back to the United States now that small businesses are starting to produce these in their companies. When we talk about routing is just the sequence of operation which the product has to pass. Scheduling is the process of assigning the work to be done to the departments, and moving it from the machines to the workers or teams. Now, this is a program evaluation called PERT, Program Evaluation and Review Technique, and it's a popular scheduling technique that evaluates the sequence in which all of those activities require the completion. The path requires the longest time from the start to the finish, and it just shows, okay, this is every step and what's being done in those. Managing quality. Quality, like cost and efficient, is critical, especially an operations manager. A defective product can quickly ruin a firm. It can just turn them upside down. I think about last year during the Final Four basketball, there was a basketball player who's, I don't even remember, I'm not a big basketball fan, but I remember seeing it that he was playing in the Final Four and his shoe just totally disintegrated. Well, that was not good for that shoe. And the team, I believe, actually got rid of whatever shoes. If it was Nikes, which I'm sure it was, they won't even use those anymore. So those can actually make or break a company. This is just talking about operations management and control, quality control. If you buy Fruit of the Loom, you always get, when you open the package of Fruit of the Loom, it always says inspected by. And so that's just a way of making sure that it is meeting the established standards. Another thing is called statistical process control, and that's where the company collects and analyzes information about the products, the production process. And as they're going down the steps, then they can identify, okay, we have a problem here, and this is where we need to fix it. These are just some standards that every company has set in place. These are international organizations, ISO 900 and ISO 1400. My husband is or was a Cobb County fire captain, captain, and my son is a deputy chief with the city of Morrow, and they work closely with the ISO 900, especially when they are going in to inspect buildings, to make sure that they meet these ISO 9000, to make sure that they are, the metal is what it should be, and different things like that. Inspections basically just reveal, they just inspect it so that if they're inspecting it, that it's not going to come back on them. Okay, sampling actually allows a company to pass an entire batch of products through the inspection by testing a sample. So what that does is, because it is so expensive to perform, they can't inspect every sock that comes through when they're making hundreds of thousands. So they take out just different ones and they sample to make sure that it's meeting the standards. This just shows integrating operations and supply chain managements and talks about stakeholders and global supplier codes and different things.